Federal Executive.
The president is aware of the problems of execution of plans in the country, which must be squarely faced.
The executive will soon place before.
He declares that he will be dishing out some executive orders to ensure the facilitation and speeding up of government procurements and approvals. The 2016 budget was predicated on a benchmark oil price of $38 per barrel at an oil production of 2.2 million barrels per day and an exchange rate of 197 naira to the US dollar. On the basis of these assumptions, aggregate revenue was projected at 3.86 trillion naira, while the expenditure outlay was estimated at 6.06 trillion naira. The deficit of 2.2 trillion naira, which was about 2.14% of GDP, was expected to be mainly financed through borrowing. However, President Buhari says the implementation of the 2016 budget was hampered by the combination of relatively low oil prices in the first quarter of 2016 and disruptions in crude oil production, which led to significant shortfalls in projected revenue. As at September 30, 2016, aggregate revenue inflow was 2.17 trillion naira, less than prorated projections, according to the president. Similarly, 3.58 trillion naira had been spent by the same date on both recurrent and capital expenditure. This is equivalent to 79% of the prorated full-year expenditure estimate of 4.5 trillion naira as at the end of September 2016.
In spite of these challenges, we met both our debt service obligations and personnel costs. Similarly, overhead costs have been largely covered. Although capital expenditure suffered as a result of project formulation delays and revenue shortfalls, in the 5 months since the 2016 budget was passed, the amount of 753.6 billion naira has been released to capital expenditure as at the end of October 2016. It is important to note this is one of the highest capital releases recorded in the nation's recent history. In fact, it exceeds the aggregate capital expenditure budget for 2015. Consequently, work has resumed on a number of stalled infrastructure projects, such as the construction of the new terminals at the country's 4 major airports, numerous major road projects, key power transmission projects, and the completion of the Kaduna-Abuja Railway, to mention a few. We remain resolute in our commitment to the security of life and property nationwide. Thank you very much.
At the end of the presentation, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Yakubu Dogara, adds that the trend of low percentage performance on budgets must be eradicated.
This is because implementation and execution of the agreed budget is always a major challenge year in, year out. Sometimes implementation rate is as low as 30%, most time. It is never higher than 50% at the best of times. This has led to unacceptably high rate of abandonment of projects and distortions in Nigeria's economic planning. Of course, this is an inherited problem for Mr. President, as he has only effectively passed through one budget cycle. As I counseled last year, An appropriation act must be allowed to run for an uninterrupted period of 12 months for the executive to have enough time to execute it. This means that both Mr. President and the National Assembly must find a way to continue the execution of the 2016 budget, especially the capital component, till May 6, 2017, which is 12 months from the date Mr. President signed into law the 2016 appropriation bill. This is also the clear intentment of the definition of a financial year in Section 3.18 of our Constitution. The problem is that most often the recurrent component of the budget is implemented to an appreciable level, but the capital component execution is very low. It is crystal clear that the capital component of the 2016 budget cannot realistically be implemented for only 6 months period, considering the time required for procurement processes and the raising of the revenue, including loans by government. Except something is done, this will result in yet another failed budget. May God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, may I invite you formally now to lay the budget.
According to the President's presentation, the proposed aggregate expenditure of 7.298 trillion naira will comprise statutory transfers of 419.02 billion naira, debt service of 1.66 trillion naira, sinking fund of 177.46 billion naira to retire certain maturing bonds, non-debt recurrent expenditure of 2.98 trillion naira, and capital expenditure of 2.24 trillion naira. That will also include capital in statutory transfers. Key capital spending provisions in the budget include power, works and housing to GOP 529 billion naira, transportation 262 billion naira, special intervention programs 150 billion naira, defense 140 billion naira, industry, trade and investment 81 billion naira, water resources 85 billion naira, interior would GOP 63 billion naira, education 50 billion naira, universal basic education commission 92 billion naira, health 51 billion naira, federal capital territory 37 billion naira, Niger Delta ministry 33 billion naira, and the Niger Delta Development Commission 61 billion naira.